In the heart of Chicago during the roaring 1920s, a city ruled by fear, corruption, and the booming illegal alcohol trade, one night would change the course of history for the most notorious gangster of the era. The Lexington Hotel, a seemingly ordinary venue, became the stage for a dramatic confrontation that would send shockwaves through the underworld and the police alike. This is the story of the Lexington Hotel Raid, a night of tension, betrayal, and bullets that no one who survived would ever forget. Main story, Part 1. The evening began like any other for the Chicago outfit, led by Al Capone's trusted associates. The Lexington Hotel, located in the heart of the city, was bustling with wealthy guests, gang affiliates, and law enforcement eyes quietly monitoring the scene from afar. Capone had strategically arranged a private gathering at the hotel, under the guise of a high-profile meeting with influential businessmen and politicians. Yet behind the polished facade of champagne glasses and polite conversation, the air was thick with suspicion, rivalries, and hidden agendas. As the night progressed, whispers of betrayal and unsettled scores circulated among the guests. Capone, ever aware of potential threats, had stationed his most loyal enforcers at key points in the building, subtly observing the movements of every visitor. No one could make a sudden move without being noticed. The hotel's grand ballroom, adorned with chandeliers and heavy velvet curtains, served as the perfect stage for both elegance and impending violence. At exactly 10:15 p.m., tension reached its peak. A rival faction, who had long been seeking revenge for a prior street conflict, quietly slipped into the back entrance. They had weapons concealed beneath their coats, and their objective was clear: disrupt Capone's meeting and send a message that the Lexington Hotel was no longer safe for the Chicago outfit. Capone, ever vigilant, had already anticipated the possibility of such an intrusion. His eyes, sharp and calculating, scanned the room as the uninvited guests approached, their presence unnoticed by most, but not by him. Within moments, the atmosphere shifted from casual sophistication to tense anticipation. Capone's lieutenants subtly moved into positions, their hands hovering near their weapons, ready for any confrontation. The rival gang members, unaware that they had walked into a trap, continued their advance toward the ballroom, confident that they could strike fear into the heart of the outfit. And then it happened. The first shot rang out, echoing against the ornate walls. Chaos erupted instantly. Guests ducked behind tables, crystal glasses shattered, and Capone's men moved with precision, cutting off escape routes and isolating the intruders. It was a carefully orchestrated moment, not just of violence, but of strategy, showing that Capone's empire was built not on chaos, but on controlled, calculated power. As the first gunshot echoed through the Lexington Hotel, pandemonium broke loose. Crystal chandeliers swayed as terrified guests scrambled for cover, tables overturned, and the rich aroma of expensive cigars mingled with the acrid smoke from firearms. The rival gang, expecting chaos but not precision, soon realized that they had underestimated the Chicago outfit's preparation. Capone's men, trained for moments exactly like this, moved like shadows, blocking exits, securing corners, and herding the intruders into the ballroom center where their options were rapidly diminishing. Capone himself did not fire a single shot. Instead, he remained at the periphery, eyes sharp, observing every detail, reading the tension like a master strategist reading a chessboard. Each movement of his adversaries was calculated, each decision weighed in real time. Witnesses later recounted that his presence alone, the calm in the storm, the silent authority, was enough to paralyze even the boldest of rivals. Men who had plotted violence against him found themselves frozen, caught in a web they could neither escape nor comprehend. Amid the chaos, a daring police officer, tipped off about potential gang activity, stormed the hotel lobby, aiming to apprehend the criminals. What followed was a tense standoff, a deadly game of cat and mouse, bullets ricocheting off marble floors and ornate walls, patrons screaming as they ducked behind furniture, and Capone's lieutenants moving with surgical precision to protect both the guests and their boss. One of the rival leaders, a notorious enforcer known for his cruelty on the streets, attempted to charge Capone directly. He underestimated the terrain and the men surrounding Capone. In seconds, he was intercepted, disarmed, and restrained, while the other intruders hesitated, unsure whether to retreat or continue the assault. The hotel, once a place of luxury and comfort, had transformed into a battlefield, where survival depended not on brute force alone, but on strategy, alliances, and understanding the enemy's mind. The police, caught in the crossfire and shocked by the sheer audacity of the attack, struggled to contain the situation. Officers were forced to take cover behind pillars and furniture, exchanging fire with both sides while trying to protect innocent bystanders. In those moments, the Lexington Hotel became a microcosm of Chicago itself, a city teetering between law and disorder, wealth and crime, loyalty and betrayal. Capone, ever the tactician, had anticipated the timing and positioning of the police intervention. His men guided panicked guests to safety while isolating the rival gang members, ensuring that no innocent lives were lost. The rival gang's strategy, which had relied on the element of surprise, had completely unraveled. What had begun as an attempt to attack the Chicago outfit turned into a lesson in discipline, control, and psychological dominance, Capone's true weapons beyond guns and money. After nearly 30 minutes of tense standoff, gunfire ceased. The remaining intruders were either arrested, captured by Capone's men, or had fled into the night. No one doubted the message that had been delivered: the Chicago outfit ruled, and any attempt to undermine its authority would be met not just with violence, but with overwhelming strategic superiority. News of the Lexington Hotel raid spread quickly. Rumors and whispers filled Chicago's streets, speakeasies, and back alleys. Journalists later described it as one of the most audacious and meticulously planned showdowns in the city's criminal history. Capone's reputation soared, not only for his power, but for his ability to orchestrate chaos with calculated precision. The raid had demonstrated to allies and enemies alike that the outfit was untouchable, its leader unshakable, and its strategies unmatched. As the smoke slowly cleared from the Lexington Hotel, the reality of the night's violence began to settle in. Guests who had ducked under tables or behind pillars now cautiously emerged, their eyes wide with shock, their clothes dusted with debris. Whispers rippled through the hallways. Bullets had flown, chaos had reigned, but somehow, against all odds, the hotel itself had survived intact. Yet the most important fact remained: Al Capone and his men had emerged unscathed, and the rival gang had been humiliated, their audacity met with strategic brilliance rather than sheer brutality. Inside Capone's private office at the hotel, the atmosphere was tense but controlled. Capone paced slowly, reviewing the events in his mind, calculating who had acted recklessly, who had shown loyalty, and who might require a warning in the days ahead. His lieutenants sat quietly, awaiting instructions, each understanding that even minor mistakes could have cost lives tonight. Capone's ability to manage men under extreme pressure had once again proven why he was feared far beyond the confines of Chicago. Meanwhile, police reports and witness statements began to circulate, describing the raid in painstaking detail. Capone's careful planning became apparent. Exits had been secured, hostages had been protected, and the intruders had been isolated and neutralized without unnecessary casualties. Law enforcement officials, initially seeking to apprehend criminals, now faced the uncomfortable truth that they were witnessing the work of a genius strategist rather than a simple gangster. Journalists would later describe the raid as a masterclass in criminal orchestration, noting how Capone had leveraged not only fear but intelligence and foresight to dominate the situation. Outside the hotel, Chicago's streets were alive with speculation. Rumors of the shootout spread like wildfire. Speakeasies, barber shops, and back alleys buzzed with conversation. How had Capone anticipated the rival gang's moves? Who had tipped the police off, and why hadn't Capone's men been caught off guard? The raid became a defining moment, a lesson in both fear and respect, showing that the Chicago outfit operated according to rules that outsiders could neither predict nor understand. The rival gang, humiliated and scattered, struggled to regroup. Those who had survived fled to their hideouts, nursing bruised egos and shaken nerves. Capone's subtle psychological warfare had left them demoralized. They now feared not only for their businesses and territories but for their very lives. Any plans to retaliate would have to account for the precision, intelligence, and ruthlessness that Capone had displayed that night. In effect, the Lexington Hotel raid had rewritten the rules of engagement in Chicago's underworld. By the following day, newspapers carried the story, but with careful language. The raid was portrayed as a police confrontation, a chaotic shootout between rival groups, yet insiders knew the truth. This was Capone's handiwork, a calculated, flawless execution that cemented his reputation as a criminal mastermind. Allies sought his protection, enemies reconsidered their alliances, and even the public, intrigued by the audacity and precision of the raid, found themselves captivated by his legend. Capone himself remained calm in the aftermath. He understood that power was not merely about fear, it was about perception. To the public, he was a figure of awe, a symbol of unstoppable influence. To the police, he was a puzzle they could not solve. And to rival gangs, He was a man whose foresight and control ensured that any confrontation could be turned into a spectacle that reinforced his dominance. The Lexington Hotel had become more than a location, it was now a symbol of Capone's empire, a place where courage and miscalculation collided, and where his legend was irrevocably written into the annals of Chicago's criminal history. As the sun rose over the city the next morning, Capone's men quietly cleaned the evidence, replaced damaged furniture, and returned the hotel to a semblance of normalcy. The guests who had survived left with stories that would last a lifetime, tales of bullets, courage, and the magnetic presence of a man who could command fear without lifting a finger. Chicago had witnessed a night that would be talked about for decades, a night where strategy, psychology, and ruthless efficiency had combined to create one of the most unforgettable events in American organized crime history. The morning after the Lexington Hotel Raid, Chicago awoke to a city buzzing with rumors, half-truths, and fear. Capone's operation had not only survived the night but had emerged stronger, its message clear: any challenge to the Chicago outfit's authority would be met with meticulous strategy, precision, and unrelenting control. In the aftermath, law enforcement scrambled to make sense of the chaos, realizing that they had only witnessed the tip of a criminal empire meticulously designed for dominance rather than brute force alone. Inside the Lexington Hotel, Capone convened a private meeting with his most trusted lieutenants. Every detail of the previous night was dissected: who had acted correctly, who had hesitated, and who had made errors that could not be repeated. Capone's mind worked like a chess master, anticipating moves, counter-moves, and the consequences that rival gangs and law enforcement would face. He emphasized loyalty above all else, reminding his men that their survival depended not only on courage but on discipline, vigilance, and an understanding of the psychological battlefield that Chicago's streets had become. Meanwhile, rival gang leaders convened in secret locations, struggling to rebuild morale after the raid. The humiliation of being outmaneuvered so completely by Capone created a ripple of paranoia. No one felt safe. Every meeting, every transaction, every interaction became a potential trap. Capone's ability to maintain control without firing indiscriminate bullets had cemented the fear factor in a way that random violence never could. For these gangsters, the Lexington Hotel Raid was more than a confrontation, it was a lesson in the power of strategic intimidation. The media, initially unsure how to cover the event, began circulating carefully curated stories. Headlines suggested a violent shootout with minimal casualties, but insiders knew that the true genius lay in Capone's foresight, in how he had turned a potentially catastrophic situation into a display of order and command. Journalists described the raid as unprecedented, a combination of daring action and strategic brilliance that left Chicago in awe and fear. Even politicians and city officials, who had previously underestimated the criminal syndicates, now recognized Capone as a man whose influence extended far beyond typical street-level crime. In the weeks following the raid, Capone's empire expanded quietly but decisively. The Lexington Hotel became a symbol of his dominance, a reminder to allies and enemies alike that intelligence, planning, and psychological control were just as lethal as guns and violence. Business deals were executed with subtlety and precision, rival territories were renegotiated under Capone's guidance, and the public, though fascinated by the audacity of the events, remained largely unaware of the meticulous planning that had ensured the outfit's continued supremacy. At the same time, Capone's enemies plotted cautiously. Some sought revenge, while others considered forming alliances to challenge him. But the lessons of the Lexington Hotel Raid loomed large in their minds. Capone's influence was calculated, pervasive, and often invisible until it was too late. Each attempt to retaliate was weighed against the memory of that night, a night where strategy and psychology had outmaneuvered raw aggression. Even within Capone's own organization, the Lexington Hotel Raid became a point of internal teaching. Members were reminded that victory was as much about patience, observation, and preparation as it was about courage. Those who had hesitated or misread the unfolding events were quietly corrected, reinforcing the notion that loyalty, awareness, and precision were mandatory for anyone operating under Capone's command. By the end of the month, Chicago's criminal landscape had subtly shifted. Territories were realigned, alliances were renegotiated, and respect for Capone's tactical genius was firmly established. His empire had survived one of the most dangerous nights in its history without significant loss, and the psychological impact on both allies and rivals was immeasurable. The Lexington Hotel Raid would forever be remembered not only as a dramatic moment of violence and confrontation but as a masterclass in control, intimidation, and the subtle art of command that defined Al Capone's rise to legendary status in American organized crime. Weeks had passed since the Lexington Hotel Raid, yet the echoes of that night continued to reverberate throughout Chicago. Newspapers speculated endlessly, street corners buzzed with whispered conversations, and rival gangsters calculated their every move with heightened caution. The city had witnessed not just a shootout, but the emergence of a criminal mastermind who commanded not only fear but respect, loyalty, and unyielding authority. Capone's genius lay in turning chaos into a stage for psychological dominance, making even the most daring enemies hesitate before challenging him. In the private chambers of the Chicago outfit, Capone gathered his inner circle for a debriefing that would set the tone for months to come. The room was tense but orderly. Every lieutenant understood that this was more than a casual meeting, it was an evaluation of courage, loyalty, and strategy. Capone dissected every moment of the raid with meticulous attention: the timing of the police arrival, the positioning of the gang members, the minimal use of violence yet maximum psychological impact. Each action had been deliberate, each reaction anticipated, and the results had spoken for themselves. Those present listened, riveted by the clarity of his mind, understanding that their survival and prosperity depended on his foresight and command. Beyond the walls of the outfit's headquarters, the city itself seemed to tremble. Businessmen, politicians, and law enforcement officials had all taken notice. Capone was no longer just a gangster, he was an institution, a figure whose influence permeated every facet of Chicago life. Rivals who had once scoffed at his name now plotted in shadows, hesitant to make the first move. Even the boldest of enemies learned that one misstep could mean the end of not only a rival's career but life itself. The raid had shifted the balance of power in the city. The Chicago underworld was now operating under Capone's silent but omnipresent gaze. Capone's psychological strategy became evident in every subsequent move. He sent subtle messages to rival gangs: no direct threats, no reckless violence, but carefully orchestrated displays that reminded everyone of the raid's lessons. Territories that had been contested were quietly reassigned, businesses that resisted his influence faced sudden yet calculated setbacks, and alliances were forged or broken with precision. Capone's understanding of human nature, fear, and respect ensured that his dominance was rarely questioned again. Loyalty and obedience were no longer demanded, they were ingrained, a product of careful manipulation and undeniable presence. Within his own organization, Capone's methods became legendary. New recruits were trained to understand that power was derived not from mere aggression but from observation, patience, and strategic foresight. Those who doubted or acted recklessly were quietly removed or corrected. The Lexington Hotel Raid became a case study, a blueprint for controlling chaos without succumbing to it. Members of the outfit knew that their leader's brilliance extended beyond violence. He was a strategist, a master manipulator, and an architect of fear and respect. Meanwhile, the public remained captivated by the aura of mystery surrounding the raid. Sensationalized newspaper stories painted Capone as a ruthless gangster, yet very few understood the intricate calculations that underpinned his actions. The myth of Al Capone grew exponentially, a man who could confront law enforcement, outwit rivals, and maintain absolute control over one of the most dangerous cities in America, all without ever firing a single indiscriminate bullet. The Lexington Hotel Raid became symbolic, a testament to his intelligence, his understanding of human behavior, and his ability to project power through the mere anticipation of action. As the months turned into years, Capone's empire solidified. Speakeasies, breweries, and illegal operations flourished under his control, while competitors learned that defiance carried too high a price. Capone's ability to combine fear, respect, and tactical brilliance ensured that the Chicago outfit remained untouchable for the better part of a decade. The Lexington Hotel Raid, though just one night, became a defining moment, a microcosm of Capone's approach to power: calculated, intimidating, and profoundly effective. Ultimately, the Lexington Hotel Raid cemented Al Capone's legacy not only as a feared gangster but as a strategist whose influence shaped the city, its criminal underworld, and American organized crime history itself. It illustrated that true power did not always lie in violence but in control, foresight, and the ability to make the world bend to one's will with precision and patience. For those who witnessed it firsthand, for the rivals who plotted against him, and for history itself, that night would never be forgotten, a night when Al Capone proved that genius, fear, and unwavering authority could change the course of an entire city, and make a single man immortal in the annals of crime history.